So how long does it really take to write your first book, land an agent, and get a book deal? Well, that depends on many different factors. But today I'm going to share with you exactly how long each part of the process took me. From when I started my very first draft, to when I landed 8 agent offers for my book, to when I got a 6-figure 2-book deal. And I'm going to share 2 of the most important pieces of advice I received that helped me get there. I'm also going to be sharing all of my query stats, how many agents I queried, how many full requests I got, and the total time it took from sending out my first query letter to signing with my dream agent. And if we haven't met already, hi, I'm Lauren. I'm a young adult author and mom based in Brooklyn, and my debut novel, We Ship It, came out this past June with HarperCollins. And I work to share advice and insider tips and tons of free resources so that I can help to end gatekeeping in publishing and help you get your story out into the world. So if you're anything like me, you want some clear answers and a roadmap for how you can go from having a story that lives inside of your head to seeing that story as a published book on the shelves of your favorite bookstore. So today I'm going to take you through my full journey, and if you want a written roadmap, check out the description below for my free step-by-step guide on how to land an agent. All right, let's get into my journey. I started from zero. No fancy writing background, no MFA, no natural brilliant gift for writing. As a child, I always knew that I wanted to write a book, but then I didn't actually do anything about it. But in 2017, when I was feeling pretty burnt out from running my own startups, I decided to sit down and finally write the book that I'd always dreamed of writing. So I sat down and the story just poured out of me. And months later, I signed with my dream agent. Kidding. Oh my God, wouldn't you hate me if that were the case? No. I sat down, started writing, and it was absolutely terrible. I knew how the story sounded in my head, but that was nothing like the awkward, clunky words that were coming out. Writing a book is the hardest thing I've ever done. I can't even begin to explain how much I doubted myself and hated my earliest drafts. There were so many days that I would just sit staring at my computer screen, not writing a single word. I repeatedly questioned if this was all worth it, if my writing would ever be good enough to get published. And at the end of that summer, I gave up. I decided I just didn't have what it took. But at the start of the next summer, I decided to give things another shot, and I got back into my draft. But the same cycle of self-doubt crept in, and at the end of that summer, I gave up as well. And the issue was that I was way too focused on the end goal of having a published book. And so I kept comparing my early writing to the writing that I found in published books. The cadence of their lines, the many layers of the worlds within them, how real all of the characters felt. And I knew this wasn't what my writing sounded like. So this giant gap that existed is what blocked me and led to so many periods of writer's block. But one day I discovered this quote that forever changed me as a writer. It's from Ira Glass, and I'm going to paraphrase a little, but he said that we get into creating art and writing because we have really good taste. But when we first start out, there's this huge gap that exists between the writing that we love and the writing we're actually creating. And this is why we constantly feel disappointed in our own work. But if you put in the hard work, like lots and lots of hard work, slowly but surely, this gap will begin to close. And this is when, and this is my favorite part of the quote, he says your work will be as good as your ambitions. But it takes like a really, really long time. So it was when I stopped focusing on the successful author part and gave myself permission to write badly, that's when I started getting more words out onto the page. And the more I wrote, the more confident I became in my own writing. And in 2019, I finally made a real commitment. And I actually ended up throwing out everything I'd written in the summers of 2017 and 2018, although I kept a similar cast of characters and setting, so that didn't all go to waste. So from March until September of 2019, that's when I finally wrote the first draft of the book that I ended up clearing. And I was spending around 10 hours per week actually writing. So do not think that you need to be a full-time writer in order to become a published author. Very few writers I know actually write more than maybe a few days a week, a few hours at a time. For me, even on a good day, I'm usually not doing more than an hour or two of real writing. And this has always been hard for me because I'm used to being really productive and working like 60-hour weeks at my startups. But when it comes to writing, if I'm tired or hungry or just not feeling it, I'm generally not getting much writing done. But I learned to have a consistent button chair routine, and I managed to finally complete my draft by September of 2019. So then I got into the editing phase, and the end seemed closer, so I started going all in and working 40 or 50 hours a week. So for the next 6 months, from September of 2019 until February of 2020, I wrote the second, third, and fourth drafts of my book. And then in March 2020, the world shut down and I started working 24/7 because it was either that or spend all day doom scrolling. And I polished my draft. I worked for about 3 weeks with an amazing editor who helped me with line edits. And then in April of 2020, I finally had a finished and polished draft that I felt was ready for agents. All right, so let's discuss my querying journey. So from mid-March until mid-April of 2020, I wrote like 30 different versions of my query letter and got tons and tons of feedback. And if you want to see that letter, you can check out the description below. And then also during that time, I was doing tons and tons of research on agents and advising an entire query strategy that I used. And so many writers have asked me about this that I actually ended up creating a full-out online course on how to land an agent called Query Bootcamp. And of course, there's more information on that in the description below as well. So in total, I spent 2 summers working on a draft that I ended up throwing out. But those were important summers because that was when I was really learning how to write. And then I spent around 1 year, about 6 months part-time and 6 months full-time, actually writing the book that I ended up querying. Before I share my query stats, I just want to say this process is so hard. Even with how lucky I got, this was still one of the hardest periods of my life. So try not to fall into the comparison game. You don't need to have the stats that I did to end up landing an agent. And also remember, with how lucky I got, that was due to many factors, including the timing, the genre I was writing, the fact that I spent all of my time for months working on this because it was the pandemic and I had nothing else to do. But many amazing books don't end up with this many full requests or offers, and it can just take a much longer time to land an agent. So if that's the case, just remember it's totally okay. You only need 1 offer. Time for my query stats. I queried 50 agents over 4 weeks between April and May of 2020, and I go over the strategy a lot more in Query Bootcamp, but I generally advise writers to query a lot of agents as long as they are getting some full requests on their manuscripts. Within that first month, I got 13 full requests, and then 1 month after I began querying, I got my very first offer. After that, I followed up with every agent who had either not responded to my query letter or who had my full manuscript but hadn't yet given me an answer. And then in those 2 weeks, which were very exciting, I got 7 more offers, and most of those came either at the start of that 2-week period or right at the end. So in total, I queried 50 agents, I got 26 full requests, I had 21 rejections on my query letter. I had 17 rejections on my full manuscript, and those all came after my first offer. I had 3 closed no response, 8 offers, and 1 likely offer but passed due to time. After I signed with my dream agent, she took my book out on sub. And that is a story for another day. But while I was querying, I'm so thankful I connected with a debut author, Nicole Kranzer, who gave me some of the best advice I have gotten that I now share with all writers, which is that while you are querying, you should make sure you are deep into writing your next book. Because the querying process is filled with just a lot of emotions and a lot of rejections, even if you end up doing well. And you don't want that to get you down or make you give up on writing. So by the time I signed with my agent, I was already pretty deep into my second book. And that is the book that flowed out of me in a matter of months. And my agent actually took that book out on sub only 10 months after I signed with her. And then less than a month later, so now we are in April of 2021, she got a book deal for that book. And then 2 weeks later, she got a second book deal for a 6-figure 2-book deal. And so I signed that in May of 2021. Fast forward 2 years to June of this year, 2023, when my debut novel, We Ship It, finally came out. So I started writing in summer of 2017, and I got to hold my published book in my hands in the summer of 2023. So all in all, that took 6 years. And what is truly wild about this industry is that I got really lucky, and that is considered fast. The second important piece of advice I want to give to you is to not do what I did, which is to start writing and then just completely give up, pick up again, give up again. I want you to write and believe in yourself. So, as Neil Gaiman once said, if you want to write only when you're feeling inspired, become a poet. But if you want to write a novel, you need to establish regular writing sessions, regardless of whether you're in the mood or not, because that consistency is going to help you improve so much faster. To all writers out there, and especially to you querying writers, I want to wish you the best of luck. Try your best not to set all of your hopes and dreams onto one book. Remember that you've got a long literary career ahead of you, and this is a very slow industry. Believe in yourself, put in consistent work, and tell the story you most want to tell. You've got this.